على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح ربي زدني علما ربي هب لي حكما وألحقني بالصالحين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار آمين يا أرحم الراحمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. By the grace and tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, today we are going to talk about some of the lessons from ayah number 105 of Surah Al Imran, the third surah of the Quran. So we will go over the recitation and word by word meaning first. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
ولا تكونوا كالذين تفرقوا واختلفوا من بعد ما جاءهم البينات وأولئك لهم عذاب عظيم.
So, wa la and do not, la for not. Takunu, do not be. Like when we say, an easy way to remember is the word kun. When we say for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he says kun, fayakun, he says be and it is, right? So kun is to be and takunu is for to be for all of you, right? So plural for all of you. Wala takunu, and all of you do not be kalladina, like. Kaf here is for like. Alladina, those who. So wala takunu kalladina, and do not be, all of you do not be like those who did what? Tafarraqu, those who became divided. Tafarruq is from firqa or farak, which means to part one from another. And tafarraqu here, tafarraqu means to be broken into parts. Like to be broken and broken and broken, right? So something that breaks into many parts. It was one, but then it gets broken into many parts. So do not be like those who became divided. وَاخْتَلَفُوا, and they differed. مِن بَعْدِ, from after. مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْعِلْمُ, after what? جَاءَهُم, came to them. Sorry, not ilm. So مَا جَاءَهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ, from what came to them. Al-Bayyinat. Bayyinat refers to the clear proofs. Clear proofs, and usually it's referred to in terms of for revelation, right? So do not be like those who became divided and differed after clear proofs came to them. Okay. Ulaika, and those, meaning those who differed and who became divided and everything, lahum, for them, is adabun adim, is the punishment which is great. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, do not be like those who became divided and they fell into disputes after clear signs had come to them. These are the ones for whom there is a grave punishment, right? So before this, as the passage that we are learning here, we are learning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us different ways, different things that we need to have in order to be able to deal with the society around us, to deal with the people around us, and the capabilities that we need to develop amongst ourselves and things we need to do, right? So after, in the previous ayat, what we learned was that we have to, after having established that Muslims have a distinct mission. And what is our mission? To convey and preach the good, and not just any good, but a message of good that is God oriented. That is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines good. And invite people to, like to the fair, and then give a warning to those and forbid people from the unfair, right? And to strengthen the unity and everything. We learned about that as well. And in the previous ayat, we learned about like how some groups should stand up. There should be some groups among people, among the ummah, amongst our brotherhood and sisterhood of Islam, who should stand up and who should take certain jobs to do. And there should be certain groups from every community and everything. We learned about that. Now in this ayah, the whole ummah is being addressed as a whole, all of us, all together. So earlier it was like a few people from a group, a few groups or something. Now it's all of us. Also, this ayah kind of complements ayah number 103, right? Where all the Muslims were asked that hold on tightly, all of you hold on tightly to the rope of Allah, and seek unity and strength. And when you attach yourself to Allah's commands, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to Allah's word, to the Quran, individually and collectively, then you will be united. Then you will not. Then you will not be divided. So continuing from these thoughts now in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is instructing us that, and it's a strong instruction, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ تَفَرَّقُوا, and do not be, just make sure that you do not become like those who did something, right? So it's an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and obviously, so we need to take it seriously. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering the whole ummah in general, and at that time, obviously, the Sahabas were listening to this ayah when it is being revealed, them in particular, that when you go out for a common cause, like you will, because as a nature you will go out for common cause and everything, then don't promote forums, don't promote divisions amongst each of you and everything. Don't promote like this forum and that forum and that forum. Don't be like those who were given the job earlier before you. They were given this job and they didn't do it. So according to the scholars, what this is referring to is the Jewish scholars of before, like who differed amongst themselves and who became divided. And if we look at the Jewish history, how did they become divided? We see a lot of sects that are forming, and then just when we take a little bit of look at them, we see like they were orthodox, they were like conservative ones, they were liberal ones, they were Pharisees, they were Sadducees, they were people who would say like who would focus on the afterlife and everything. There were people who say like, let's just focus on here and now and not talk about what is under the ground or over the skies. Don't keep talking about that. Let's talk about just now. There were people who and different groups on different. Some people said we should be very spiritual in nature and everything related to this world is evil. So we should like literally give up things, like we should have a lot of monk-like lifestyle. And monasteries and everything became very common in Christianity much later on, but it also existed in Jewish groups before. So there are many kinds of groups that happened and everything. But here, first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us is that don't become like those who became divided and differed after ilm had come to them, after clear proofs had come to them. What does the statement just tell us? The first thing that it tells us is that the religion and the clear knowledge by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the clear proofs by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were given clear proofs, but those proofs were actually not the reason. Like sometimes we hear from a lot of people, you know what, I don't discuss religion and politics because it always leads to trouble and everything, right? So, and a lot of people like to say that, you know what, like religion always leads to trouble, religion always divides. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us it was not the bayinat, it was not the religion which was the reason for their division. So what was actually the reason, right? So what happened if we look at the history of the people before us, then we will see that they were actually given a very clear concept of the right religion through the Torah and the Gospel, the original Torah and the original Gospel, the Old Testament and the New Testament. They were given very clear concepts of the religion. They were the core teachings of oneness of God, of Tawheed, were very convincingly explained to them, and they were the teachings of their religion were imparted to them in very clear terms. It was like very clear and everything, right? But again, what happened is they took like the little masle that they had, the little things that they had, and then they made them big, right? And they made them big, and they engaged in a lot of like rhetorics and a lot of like theological hair splitting arguments and debates and 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 the main reason behind divisions to happen was that they preferred to follow, a lot of them, they preferred to follow their own desires, the dictates of their own desires, or what they wanted to do, or what they wanted people in their group to be able to do. And they wanted to follow that rather than the Torah and the Gospel. And that's what led to the divisions. Another reason of the divisions was a lot of egoistic and arrogant self-assertion, like in both the fundamentals of the religion and also the subsidiaries of the religion. Like whatever I'm saying, this is the right thing. Every other group, every other scholar, or every other person who's saying something, they're wrong. I'm the one who's right because this is the thing, right? So that's arrogance that becomes like that. So the two main reasons were arrogance and that they preferred their own desires. And then they focused on the side issues much more and made them much bigger. than they actually were. Right? Excuse me. So a lot of people, what happens is different groups starting having their own interpretations of the Torah, and there was so much ikhtilaf, so much differences of opinion in the fiqh matters, in the legal matters and everything. And then what it led to, slowly and gradually and everything, was a lot of differences, a lot of disruption, and a lot of mutual hatred for each other, right? And so what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us is, do not become like them who did that, right? And why is Allah ta'ala telling us? Just like we learned in Surah Baqarah, and even now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us something, the what happened, something that was not so pleasing that happened with the previous generations. Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us that? He's telling us that not so that we can go to them and say, okay, you did this wrong and that wrong, this is bad in your history, your ancestors did this and they did that and did that. No, that's never the case. The point is that we take lesson from it so that we protect ourselves from it, so that we don't fall into the same trap. Because the same shaitan who tricked them is the same shaitan who's going to try to trick us too. The same tricks that shaitan used on them, the same trick shaitan is going to use on us too. So when we are better, let's say what this means is to be well informed of our enemy and what the tactics of our enemy are, so that we can protect ourselves. Right? And unfortunately, we see a lot of those things happening in our our communities too, right? So if we look at ourselves as Muslims today, and those were the Muslims of yesterday, right? So the when we are saying the Jewish scholars of that time of before the Prophet ﷺ, we are meaning the Muslims of that time. They were the Muslims of that time, and then after the final prophet came, then whoever followed him was, so whoever followed the real prophets were the Muslims of that time, right? So today, if you look at us, we have one Rabb, the Muslims all over the world. We have one Rabb, we have one prophet, that the final prophet that we talk about. We have one book, the Quran. The one thing which is common in all Muslims all over the world is that we follow the same book. We have the same Rabb, we have the same prophet, we have the same book, the Quran, and we have the same Kaaba, right? And even despite we have all these things, we have we have still divisions in our ummah. And it just takes, even if anybody just comes to the religion, it doesn't take long to realize how many divisions there are, right? And why are there so many divisions, right? When we see the history of the people before us, we learn. And also for now, we for us, like more than 1440 years after Islam came. Now, as we look at even the Muslim history from after Islam came, we will see a lot. We'll see a lot of like rise and fall of different times as well. Like we see rise and fall of Spain, Bukhara, like of different other Muslim nations and everything, what happened and how things went, and what led them to rise, what led them to fall, and what are the divisions there. We learn a lot of things even from that history, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us the results of when this happens. When this happens, when these divisions happen, when these differences happen, then then what are these are the examples, and you better not follow them. So learn a lesson from the past communities which were destroyed by mutual dissension. And the lesson for us is to do our best to stay away and to stay safe against these diseases. It's like, like when there is a virus around, we wear a mask, we protect ourselves, right? So we know that this is something that is used by Shaitan to create divisions, and Shaitan loves to create divisions. And this is how Shaitan has created division amongst the Muslims of before, amongst the Muslims of the last 1,000 years, and amongst us today as well. So how do we encounter that? What all do we do? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all these different tools, right? So one thing is that if we just look at it, like if we look at different options that we have, sometimes people say that if we look at the condition of Muslims all over the world in different places and everything, we see, okay, the Muslims are being oppressed at different places, the Muslims are being tortured and everything. Now what are the options that we have? How do we deal with these things, right? And even from within the Muslim communities, we see those things happening. One option is you fight back. But then if we think of fighting back, we don't have much resources to fight back. So we are not really equipped with fighting back. What about, okay, how about we like swear at them and like be mean and nasty and everything to them, that will only backfire. There's no, what you give out, that's what you will get, right? And how about like you defame other people and you say bad things about them, and again, if you do that, what's the benefit you're going to get out of it, right? So all these means of oppressing somebody back, like in terms of what you get oppression, this is not, not going to get anything out of it. So what do we have to do, right? So we know, one of our teacher, and she says, mashallah tabarakallah, that if somebody is putting you in fitna every day, somebody is working on influencing you and your youth and your children and your they're scheming and plotting and everything against it, and they're like trying to influence people and everything, and every day they're creating new fitna, new fitna, new fitna. Then where is the wisdom lies? What should you do? The wisdom is that you start to work on influencing the influencers, right? That you make them your own. Then what happens is, and this is how do you do this? We learned it in the previous ayah, by amar bil maruf and nahi anil munkar. And maruf, like we learned last time, is something that is well known, goodness that is well known, something that is natural to the fitra. So you work on the causes, on the social causes that are happening around you. You work on the needs of the people around you. You call people towards a goodness that is common, that is well known to everybody, and stop from wrong and everything. And then they will be softer towards you. They will, and then they will listen to you, inshallah, right? And that's the way to deal with things, rather than fighting, rather than creating that. There is a time and place for everything, but this is a way to start with things, right? And for us, if you look at that we are not, as an ummah, if you look at the condition of Muslims all around, we are not being able to even um, keep the Muslims together, right? So first thing is, try to keep our own people together, be united amongst each other, and then try to influence the different influencers and everything with goodness, with the correct thing, not by harming anybody, not by abusing everybody, not by fighting with everybody and everything, unless like a push comes to shove, right? When there's no other option left, there's no other option left. But and obviously it has to be a regular organized kind of thing, not just like anybody standing up doing anything, right? So not defaming anybody, staying truthful, not just because, okay, this is my cause, so okay, I'm against this person, so I'll just say whatever just to insult that person so that I can look good. No, our religion doesn't teach us to do that. We have to stick to the truth, right? And the Prophet ﷺ told us to the effect that in my ummah, jihad will be there till the Qiyamah, till the day of judgment. And what is that jihad he's talking about? Not how the media portrays what is jihad. Now, this term has been hijacked and used very inappropriately as well. Like, jihad has many flavors to it, and going towards goodness and stopping from evil, that is jihad as well. And the biggest jihad is what happens inside of us, that we're fighting with ourselves to do something. My heart wants to do something else, but Allah's pleasure is in something else. And when I force myself to go towards what Allah wants rather than what I want, then that's a jihad. I'm fighting with myself, right? And and if we are working on stopping evil in the society, or evil in people around us and everything, and evil actions in people around us, then the benefit's going to come to us as well, practically speaking, because the society will be healthier. It will benefit everybody, right? And also, when we are calling people to good and stopping them from evil, then they will see the beauty of Islam themselves and they would want to be Muslims. Like, it will appeal to their fitra, right? And then so many fitnas, like as people start to embrace Islam, or even get like know that even if they don't accept Islam, they start to understand what Islam is all about, because it's heavily misinterpreted and misrepresented. But if it is understood by people and everything, then the fitna would reduce anyway, right? And so the what is the cure for a lot of things is a cure for a lot of problems is to teach people what we are learning. And who all can we fight anyway, right? So we should give our message with love, right? With love, care and concern. And when we don't do it, then even in this world, people will get azab, right? And punishment comes even in this world. And in past, we've seen so many atrocities came, not just on, and we are not just talking about like people from before the Prophet Muhammad SAW, but even in our history, we see so many atrocities were done on Muslim scholars. So many libraries were destroyed, libraries upon libraries were destroyed, right? And everything. So uh, you know, the thing is, if we are committed and our message have to be soft and everything, the truth is what we what we've learned in this passage is that all fundamentals of religion are clear, because Allah SWT is saying here, "Ma ja'ahumul bayyinat." Bayyinat, the fundamentals of the religion, the core of the religion is clear. And even we learned in the beginning of the surah that, you know, like there are mutashabihat, there are things which are doubtful, and there are things which are certain, that things are which are very, very clear. They're as clear as light, right? And then the people who have this disturbance in their hearts, who want to create fitna, they go after mutashabihat. They go after things which are unclear, the things which are ambiguous, and they target those rather than talking about things which are very clear. But Allah SWT told us in this passage that focus on the ma'ruf, focus on that which is well known, right? And there's always, you know, like uh, like we know in the religion, the fundamentals are very clear, and even many subsidiaries are very clear, and they that they allow almost no margin for disagreement unless there is some selfish motive, somebody wants to really misinterpret something. But at the same time, there's also another issue that we need to understand here is um, there are subsidiary issues in our religion that are not so definite and clear. And what happens in those cases, right? And why are they not clear, first of all? So it's so sometimes when we see a lot of disagreements amongst people of knowledge, or when we see people who are not agreeing with each other, okay, this person is a scholar, that person is a scholar, I love both of them, I respect both of them, but this person said something, the other person saying something totally different. So how do I reconcile that? And how do I understand that? What is allowing, what is happening in my religion that's allowing that and everything. So it's important for us to understand that, right? So like there are subsidiary issues, right? So what happens is in some issues that are not so definite and clear, they either don't have a clear support from the text of the Quran and Sunnah. So that's something that is not very clearly supported either this way or that way in the Quran and Sunnah. Rather, they have been like deduced by scholars on the basis of analogy, like something's been said, and the scholars, it's not about this situation. We don't find anything about this particular situation, but based on some other situations and based on analogies, the scholars have deduced it by that, right? In those cases, we find differences. Or sometimes we find differences when the text is there, but the text is such that it is open to different interpretations. And then there is different interpretations and different opinions based on that, right? So if we look at these different scenarios, what happens is our deen, it has room for the difference of opinion based on this, right? And this kind of difference, that is not tafarruq. This kind of difference is so just so that we understand what is tafarruq and what is not, right? So the difference of opinion, which is based on, okay, there are two different scholars, both are following the Quran and Sunnah, both are going by the we'll just talk about like how they're going about it, and both are right in that sense. Then that difference of opinion is not division or disuniting. That is not that is based on something called ijtihad. And what is ijtihad in our religion? If ijtihad is conducting a competent inquiry within the framework provided by Sharia to resolve a religious issue. So what does that mean again? There is some religious issue. Okay, and okay, so now we need to solve that. And there are scholars who are looking at that issue. Okay, how do we solve that? And in what they're doing is they're using the framework provided by Sharia. They don't go outside the framework of the Sharia. They use the framework of the Sharia and they conduct a competent inquiry within that framework to resolve that religious issue, right? So, and then they come to different opinions. So we can think of it like there's a constitution of a country, and then there are some laws that are made. Now, when the lawyers argue in the courts, what they do is they have a certain position. Now they'll cite the same law and they will give like examples and this and that about this current situation, this current case. But this particular case has not been referenced in the constitution or the law in as much in the detail of every single instance of every single situation of this court case. But the lawyer will present. The lawyer cannot go out of law. The lawyer has to stay within, okay, this is the law. He'll cite this law and this part of the constitution and everything, but then he builds a case around that. He cannot go outside that, right? So when somebody is conducting ijtihad, when an Islamic jurist, when an Islamic person who has the authority to make fikr, to give the fatwas, everything, what they're doing is they're conducting a competent inquiry. Solve an issue. What can happen is now there can be multiple people offering different opinions and everything, and then we learn from a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that Amr bin al-As radiallahu anhu, he narrated that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, sorry, if a judge gives a verdict according to the best of his knowledge and his verdict is correct, that is, a judge did that, he followed the whole procedure and everything, and his verdict was correct, what he gave the, that means, what does it mean by correct here? That it agrees with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ's verdict. If it is the same as what is right in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what the Prophet ﷺ would have given the verdict as well, then this person, this jurist, will get a double reward. Okay. And if he gives a verdict, again, according to the best of his own knowledge, but his verdict was, let's say, wrong, meaning that it was not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Prophet ﷺ would have chosen. Obviously, the Prophet ﷺ is not with us anymore. We cannot check with him, right? So if the Prophet was here, but again, we have no way of knowing. It's only on the day of judgment that we'll come to know which was out of the two opinions, which was right, right? So, but even if his verdict is wrong, but he followed the best of his knowledge and everything, and and he stayed within the framework of Sharia and everything, even then, if his verdict was wrong, even then he will get a reward, right? So the Prophet ﷺ told us that, right? So and also, so here what we are referring to is ijtihad, which is permissible under the Sharia of Islam and not otherwise. So what does it mean by ijtihad under the Sharia of Islam? First, something that already there's no categorical decision available in the Quran and Sunnah. For something that is for which there's already a categorical decision available in the Quran and Sunnah, then there's no need for ijtihad, right? Then there's no question of ijtihad. It is very clear according to Quran and Sunnah. Now, but supposing a decision is not available in that particular category or exactly that situation, right? And or what can happen is another scenario is that the decision is not clear and it is susceptible to more than one interpretation. Then obviously, then there is a question of ijtihad that arises of the scholar who's going through that. And then another situation could be that there are a combination of some ayat and hadith which may be apparently contradictory for that situation, right? So in that case too, there is an ijtihad that might be needed because there's a combination of ayat and hadith that points to this direction, and there's another combination of ayat and hadith that are pointing to another direction. So what are we going to do, right? So somebody has to do ijtihad about it, but then that brings to the next point. Who can do this ijtihad? Now, only those can do ijtihad who have the prerequisites to, who are qualified to do it, because this is not an easy thing to do, right? It requires, first of all, the most perfect expertise of all disciplines, not just one discipline, like all disciplines related to the Quran and Hadith, right? Somebody who has studied the Quran and Hadith in depth and all the sciences of the Quran and the Hadith, right? And they have in-depth knowledge of the Arabic language, right? And they are very well versed with the sayings of the Sahaba and the Tabi'in, right? How did different Sahabas, different Tabi'in. So it's we can think of it like there is let's say there's a heart surgeon, as opposed to that, there is a grade 12 science student, right? So a grade 12 science student, you cannot expect them, even though they're heading in the same direction, their intentions are really good and everything, but they cannot carry out a heart surgery because they don't have that kind of knowledge or the expertise yet, right? Whereas a heart surgeon can tell you, okay, you can do the, they can carry out the surgery, and also they can advise a person, which another person might not be able to do it, even though they are too are a student of science and everything, right? So there's a difference, right? So there is an expertise, and there is, for that expertise, there is time, and there is knowledge, and there is to get to that expertise level. It just doesn't, and we understand that for any sciences, any of the modern sciences, if we look at any of the physical sciences, we understand this, that to reach that level of expert, there are years upon years that are invested, right? So, and Quran and Hadith is the highest form of knowledge. So we cannot just to study medicine, or just to study engineering, or just to study law. We have to put so many years and so much hard work, and then we expect that we will just learn everything about the Quran and the Hadith in like 2 years or 5 years or 6 years, while we have spent like 20 years, and then we keep updating ourselves. We have to keep giving exams, and we have to learn new things and everything. We have to keep updating ourselves in our own fields of medicine and engineering. But Quran and Hadith, we just want it to be like quick, like that, right? It doesn't happen, and we cannot do, just because we have done a few courses, or we have done some things, we are not reached that level. So ijtihad can only be done by people who have deep knowledge of fiqh, who understand different madahib, who understand disciplines related to Quran and Hadith, because they understand different aspects, and then they can do the ijtihad, right? So again, like we said, differences of opinion can and they do exist, and that is not the tafarruq, as long as it is done by people who are qualified, and in matters that there is required to be differences of opinion, right? So that is allowed. And in fact, according to Sayyidina Qasim bin Muhammad rahimahullah and Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahimahullah, what they said was that the difference of opinion among the noble companions, among the Sahabas, is actually a source of mercy and ease for people. It's a source of mercy for us, because when they had differences of opinion in different things, and then we have their examples, then Alhamdulillah, it gives us ease, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said, even if a person, as long as the person is using the best of their knowledge and everything, and coming to their informed decision about something, and Alhamdulillah, and they're following the Quran and Sunnah to the best of their capability, then Alhamdulillah, even if they reach a wrong decision, Alhamdulillah, they will still get reward by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they did their best, right? We are not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran in Surah Baqarah, we learn, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wusaha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not burden us with anything which is more than what we are capable of, right? So when there are multiple options available for something, now we know only one of the views is true. And decision of what is true and not is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But like we said, both will get rewarded. At the same time, no one except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to sit on judgment in the difference of opinion and say, okay, I came to this conclusion, so this is true and that is false, right? So what we say, and if we look at how, um, if you look at really well learned and humble and committed scholars, then whenever they give their opinion about something in which there is an ijtihad involved, right, what they will always add is this is like this according to the best of our understanding and insight, and whichever side they think is the closest to the Quran and Sunnah. So what they say is, as far as we think this choice is correct, although they don't rule out the possibility of it being wrong. Like they cannot rule out that possibility, and they mention it, right? So they will always say things like, and Allah knows best, right? Because like they're doing the best that they can, but obviously Allah knows what is the best situation and everything. At the same time, what they're saying is, we think that the other choice is wrong, all in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although that being the possibility of, sorry, the possibility of it being correct in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be ruled out as well, right? So although we are making this decision, but then obviously we are making it to the best of our ability, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and the other side could be more closer to the truth. We cannot deny that, and everything, right? And so this principle in fiqh is something that all imams of fiqh agree on. And So in these cases of differences of opinion, no side is taken, regardless. Like, you don't call one side as munkar and unfair and open to objection. Rather, if some in these cases where there are differences of opinion, if somebody raises objection in these cases, that raising of objection and calling somebody else like that person is a munafiq, that person is a kafir, that person and stuff for today. Unfortunately, we see that a lot, like this YouTube culture of cancel culture of like this person is deviated because of this. They said this once, that's why they deviated, and you should never listen to him and everything. Things like that, and it's very common nowadays, and may Allah forgive us and may Allah protect us. So raising objections on the matters which are in there is a genuine ikhtilaf, and there is like there is a difference of opinion, there's an ijtihad, and the other person might differ for us, but that ikhtilaf is not tafarruq. But when somebody raises that objections and raises in a nasty way, when somebody is calling somebody like this person is this person and is that and this and that, now that raising of objection, that becomes something that is creating tafarruq. Right. So in fact, what they are doing when they're accusing somebody else in nasty ways, they are actually putting themselves to that crime which they're accusing the others of, right? Like literally, like they say, when you point finger at somebody, the four fingers are pointing towards you, right? Yourself, right? So, and these rules of ijtihad and ikhtilaf, these rules, even many educated people today, like we see that they don't either comprehend them or they neglect them, right? And so we see people abusing and verbally attacking others with all sorts of derogatory remarks just because they think differently, right? And this what they don't realize is, or possibly they do realize, may Allah forgive, this leads to confrontations and disunity amongst Muslims because they have followers, right? And their followers start these arguments and fights and things. And there's if you look at just social media, there is like a war of comments going on, like, and everything. And may Allah forgive us and may Allah unite us all, right? So in conclusion, what's happening is the difference of opinion in our deen is not a problem. It never was, it never will be. And there will always be difference of opinion, right? But the problem is in the way it is handled, right? So we will see quarrelsome debates and confrontations and abuse. And usually we will see that around tertiary subjects. And people would make those tertiary subjects so big as if they were the basis of Muslim faith. What is the basis of our faith? The basis of our faith are the Ibaniyat, that we believe in one God. We believe that there is a creator, there is a God. We believe that he's one God. We believe he sent prophets. And the first prophet was Adam alayhi salam. The last prophet was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, right? And we believe in the divine books, and we believe only Quran has been preserved, right? but the other books were divine books too, right? And we believe in the akhirah. We believe that we are accountable. We do the good and we call people to maruf, right? And we do good, and we have iman. We call people to good, and we have sabr in doing that. And then we persevere in doing that, and we do some good deeds, right? So those are the basis, and everything else is there too. But then we always call people towards what is closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But what happens when people go to tertiary subjects, right? Why are people doing that? Now, when the Quran has come, the revelation has come, and this is the most important thing. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is supreme, right? Now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that this is the most important thing, then we need to focus on this, right? It tells us how important this is, right? I'll give you one example. Like, let's say in a family, like no two people on this earth have same opinion about everything. No two people. It could be the best of friends. It could be a teacher and a student. In fact, imams, if you look at the four big imams, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Abu Hanifa, right? And so these imams were actually teachers and students to each other. They had differences of opinion that have now become the whole school of thoughts and like everything, and which is okay. There's no harm with that. But the thing is, right, they were they loved each other a lot. They never fought with each other. Like the followers now are, but they loved each other. They just had a difference of opinion, and they could look past their differences of opinion. Differences didn't mean like even today, what we can do is we can talk about something. I think this, and the other person thinks this, and that's fine. This is my opinion. This is your opinion, and then we can talk about it. If we still don't agree after that, we both are still convinced of our own positions, then okay, that's fine. Let's forget. Let's go for a meal now. It's okay. It's done now. Like, okay, you're still my brother. You're still my sister. In Islam, we can go ahead and talk about something else. This is something we can agree to disagree on, and that's fine. Right? Supposing, like, let's say for in a family, to know no family such that everybody thinks alike, right? Let's say in a family there's an intense argument about something in the family. Let's say between the husband and the wife, there's a very intense argument about something. Both of them, they have their own opinions about something. They're arguing about it and everything, and they're angry with each other and something. And like everybody goes to sleep in the night. What happens? And then in the night, the house is on fire. The house catches fire. Now, when the house catches fire, let's say the wife gets up first. Now, is she going to be like, okay, my children, get up, let's leave and everything, and let's do this and quickly? Then she's trying to say things like, okay, husband, you were fighting with me, you can sleep. She's not going to do that, right? Why? Because something bigger has now come, which was bigger than that argument. Yes, we had an argument, but now this problem, this fire, or whatever the situation at hand is bigger than the argument that we were having. Our a disagreement were about things that we consider important, but it is, when we look at that, this is right now it's a situation that is much more important. So everybody will forget. Nobody will even think of that argument at that, even though they were like 10 minutes ago, let's say they were like angry with each other and everything, but right now they will be concerned for each other's safety, even their own and each other's safety almost as much, if not more, right? So they'll be like, no, come on, you need to get up. Let's go, wake up. And they'll be like, even if she's angry, she'll wake him up quickly. And he'll be like, what? It's like, no, hurry up. And then he'll be like, oh, this is happening. Are you hurt? Are you okay? They'll be taking care of each other, right? Because this is something bigger. Now, what happens if we try to understand that when we are having disagreements about something, right? And we consider it really, really important, right? What happens? Why do these things become so big? Because we haven't recognized the weight and the priority of what Allah has made important, right? This is what I feel is important, and this other person feels important, so we're arguing about it. Okay, we have a difference opinion and everything, but then what Allah has said is way more important, right? When we understand the priority of that la tafarraqu, that don't be divided. And Allah Ta'ala said, don't be divided. And in fact, avoid anything that can cause division. Like if there is a lot of difference of opinion, you see that we are not going anywhere with this, then just drop it. It's fine. We don't have to agree on everything, right? That's not the end of the world. We don't have to agree. We can just drop it. Okay, okay, khalas, alhamdulillah. I see this way, you see this way. Let's carry on. We're still sisters, right? Okay, let's not talk about this topic. Let's just change the topic and talk about something else for now. We don't have to, because something which is more important is that we don't develop this friction in our hearts against each other. That we don't develop this. Like we stay united. And what will help us stay united is the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we hold something else and we make it as important or more important, then the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will go from our hands, right? So our full effort, our full concentration has to, because this is much bigger. This is much bigger, right? Like the fire in the house is much bigger. So we have to concentrate on the bigger thing, and then inshallah we'll be saved from everything else, right? So this is more important. This is the priority, right? And so we have to focus on that. And Allah SWT has told us, "Wala tafarraqu." So we should remember that our behavior does not go in violation of the Quranic injunction, like this Quranic principle that Allah has ordered us: do not be divided. So we have to make efforts, and any sabr that we do for the sake of uniting the Muslims, whether ourselves with other Muslims or anything, that is rewarded a lot in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though, like when the Prophet ﷺ told us to the effect that when two of you get into an argument and the person who's wrong, they apologize. They make the first step, they take the first step and they apologize to the other person. Then what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build a house for them in Jannah, right? and sorry, there's a person who was right. They were not wrong. They were the person actually who were right. But for the sake of unity, they still took the first step and apologized to the other person, that, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have talked to you like that, and I shouldn't have said, I'm sorry if something hurt you and everything. It was not meant to be like that and everything. They still apologized, even though they were right. They knew they were right and they understood they were right. Yet they took that step. Why? For the sake of unity amongst the brothers and sisters in Islam, right? So then what will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for them a house in the middle of Jannah, and middle is the highest, like obviously the middle of Jannah, like the middle of anything is the best. The middle of the fruit is the best, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build a house for them in the middle of Jannah, right? And of course, we can expect that that will be the closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, right? And also we learn from another narration that like Jamaat par Allah ka haath hota hai, meaning that it just sounds so beautiful in Urdu that I just like English doesn't do justice to it. So it's like the group that is united, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings is on that group, right? His hand is on that group, right? And we want to be that group. May Allah ta'ala make us of those. If we look at one example, for example, of just to give one example, um, in a jama, in a salah that is being read in a jama, people are praying together and everything. Now there are two opinions, and two totally different opinions. Like Imam Shafi rahimahullah, he said that the followers who are following the imam, they should also recite the Fatiha as an obligation. You must recite the Fatiha, and that's an obligation according to Imam Shafi, right? According to Imam Abu Hanifa, the followers are not allowed to recite the Fatiha on their own. They should like listen to the imam, and they should not recite their own. Now, they're both totally different opinions, totally contradictory. One is saying it's an obligation, you have to do it, otherwise your salah is not, you have to do it for your salah to be valid. The other person saying, no, you cannot do it, otherwise there's a problem, right? But although they had different opinion, no group out of these, they were following their own opinion, but no group considered the other person, the group, to be like they have left their salah, or that their salah is not complete, or that they're doomed, or they are like munafiq, or they're kafir and everything. They would never blame or criticize about this matter, like like on matters like this. They would not criticize like this. Just like they would talk about other evil matters, like they would forbid, like, okay, you shouldn't drink alcohol, you shouldn't this, the things which are clearly forbidden. The level or an intensity with which they will speak about those topics, they will not use the same topics to talk about things in which there is a difference of opinion, right? So the differences are there, right? But what we are learning is we should not make those differences. First of all, differences have to be in matters in which differences have to be are allowed, right? And then those differences have to be, how we handle those differences is important. And then differences, even when differences are there, they should not become our focus, right? Even if we disagree with somebody, they are still Muslim. They're still Muslim, right? And today we see people who consider themselves educated in modern sciences, right? And they express their personal opinions relating to matters that have been already been settled in Quran and Sunnah, but they don't know about it. They haven't learned about it. But just because they are, let's say, very knowledgeable in medicine or physics or law or something, they would give their personal opinions, and they'll say, no, this is like this because I'm so educated, I'm so thing and everything. They don't have enough knowledge of Islamic sciences, let alone the highest level required for ijtihad, but they will give their personal opinions, and they would expect everyone to cater to their personal opinions, right? We see that a lot nowadays. And just because somebody is qualified in another field, they just feel that they are qualified to talk about this as well. And they speak casually about issues that even imams and mujtahids, they would dare not speak about those topics. So when we speak to the more knowledgeable, truly knowledgeable scholars that we speak to, it will be hard for us to get answers out of them, which are in like it's actually harder, like to get answers out of them for matters which are like there's differences of opinion, because they are, and they would, even though they know the answer, they have their own opinion, they know the answer, they would check and double check before giving the answer, because they don't want to say anything wrong, like they're scared about it and everything. But people like us who have like little knowledge, we would just speak casually about those matters, like, okay, I can just say about that, right? May Allah Ta'ala protect us, right? Also, We could have groups for recognition, like we could have like for knowing each other and understanding who we are, and like to recognize other people. Like we can say, okay, this person's a Canadian Muslim, American Muslim, Indian, Afghani, Bangladeshi, European, or this person's from a heritage of like black or white or brown, or they have this language, or they have this financial status, or this education, or this family, or they follow like Hanafi, Hanbali, Shafi, Maliki madhab, or everything. We could have these. There's no harm in having these things for the purpose of recognizing and like, okay, so you have this chain of thoughts. Like we won't explain every fixed situation. We can just say, okay, I follow this madhab. So that kind of gives an idea. Okay, these are the kind of broadly rulings that you follow. And Alhamdulillah, that's okay, right? But what happens is, how do we not get into tafarruq is we do not make it a matter of pride and arrogance that, okay, I follow this, and then I will look down on anybody who doesn't follow this, or I'll put like I'll put down others. I'll consider other believers below us or hate them for that, right? The entry to Jannah and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be by taqwa, not about what group that we follow, right? So um, we what we are learning is that don't forget that being a Muslim is more important rather than being attached to a certain group, right? And so our identity as a Muslim is more important than our identity as anything else. We can have all the other identities. We believe as who we are. Like I am from this origin. I live in this country. I speak these languages. I have these food preferences. I have these things that's all a part of me. I don't need to give up everything, right? I need to eat this kind of food, and Alhamdulillah, that's okay. As long as it's all halal, we can eat whatever cuisine, whatever, and we are more comfortable with people that speak our own language in the sense that we relate to them more, and that's okay too, right? But we don't make it our identity more than our identity of being a Muslim, right? So taqwa is the thing that will take us to Jannah, and taqwa is not apparent on the outside. Only Allah knows how much taqwa is there inside, right? So one thing to understand is differences are not going away anywhere. Differences have existed and differences will exist. Even in the groups, there are people who can be more spiritual. There are people who are literalists. There are people who are like, okay, we follow this and that and everything, but we can still love each other. And even if we totally disagree on something, we can still love each other a lot. Even if we totally disagree, that's totally fine, right? Why is that? Because what unites us is much more powerful than what divides us, right? What unites us, which is our deen, which is our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is much more powerful. In fact, one scholar said, like there were a couple of groups who had a lot of disagreements, and they were like at each other's throats and everything. It and and again, we learning it from the time of the Sahabas and well that in this incident happened, but this is like much more recent. That one of the scholar, there were two groups in his audience when he was giving this, and they were like they were like um, very upset with each other and everything, and okay, and then what he said to them is like, you know what, when I hear the Prophet Sallallahu name, or when you hear the Prophet Sallallahu name, what do you say? You say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And when any person from this other group, right, no matter what sect or what group or what thing they call, when they hear the name of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, what do they say? They say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as well. So our love for Allah and our love for Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam should be so powerful that it should wipe over any mutual hate or hate that we have despite our differences. Right? That's what it means to love Allah and the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam more. Right? This person says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Right? I might not agree with them. If I find like I'll have my own way of dealing with them or whatever, but I can't hate them, right? I can't hate them, and I can't make our differences become so big, right? So our differences will not go away, but tafarruq can go away, right? So we can let go of faction-based thinking. We can let go of hatred about each other. And if we think about it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be kind and merciful. Even he wanted Musa alayhi salam to be kind and merciful to even Firaun, who was killing babies, right? None of our family members, none of the people of our ummah, they are killing thousands of babies every alternate year, right? Newborn babies. None of them is doing that, right? So then why is it so hard for us to be kind and merciful to a fellow Muslim or to a family member? Or or to think of someone as hopeless and a lost cause. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Firaun was not a lost cause. Firaun, who considered himself God. Astaghfirullah. He considered himself, he made people say that he's Rabb, right? And he was killing infants and he was torturing people. He was oppressing people like anything for years upon years upon years. Yet to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was still not a lost cause. He told Musa alayhi salam to be kind to him, to speak softly to him, to right, to invite him, because like who knows, his heart might turn, right? This deen is a mercy to all humanity. And if we are not even merciful to those inside the deen, those who are already inside the deen, then how will we be merciful to the entire humanity? Right? We cannot be that. So as just as a conclusion, as we see a lot of and this is my own thoughts, like obviously I'm not I'm just sharing some of my thoughts now. This is not from a tafsir, but sometimes, like, we see a lot of differences of some people are saying this group is talking like this group is like, so what do I do as an audience, as a student? What do I do, like everything, and how do I make sure that I am at the right path and I'm not um, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, tafarruq and uh, ikhtilaf, they're two different things that he's told us in this ayah, right? So we have to make sure there are differences that will happen, but how do I protect myself from tafarruq? We've learned that all these things, but how do I stay committed to the right thing, and how do I, because my knowledge is not that much. When I look at somebody, I trust their knowledge. So how do I know that in terms of religion, especially? Right. So it just reminded me of the ayah in Surah Baqarah, ayah number 26, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the Quran, Yudillu bihi kathira wa yahdi bihi kathira wa ma yudillu bihi illa al-fasiqeen. That through this very Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets many go astray and he guides many. But he does not misguide any except what? Except whom? Except the fasiqeen. So just to protect myself, I think one thing that we can do is first of all to guard ourselves from fisk, that we don't fall prey to fisk, that we that we don't promote shamelessness in the society. We promote modesty in the society. We promote good behavior in the society. We deal well with orphans. We are charitable people. We are honest people, right? So at least we have control over ourselves, right? We don't have control over any other person. We have control over ourselves. Secondly, we keep making dua. We keep making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, right? And there's a hadith from Abu Dawood in which Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, what was the dua that the Prophet ﷺ used to make when he stood up for tahajjud, right? And she told us this dua. And this dua basically says, O Lord of Jibrail, Mikael, and Israfil, you're the creators of the heaven and the earth, knower of the unseen and the seen. You will judge between your servants concerning that in which they differ. So guide me with regards to that wherein there is a difference, dispute concerning the truth, by your leave, right? For you guide whomsoever you will to the straight path. So what the Prophet ﷺ is asking is, first he prays Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he's asking him that you are the judge between your servants, between what is the truth. Whenever they differ about some things, you are the judge, so you guide me to whatever is the truth, despite wherever there is a difference of opinion or difference concerning the truth, or where there's a dispute concerning the truth, you you guide me, Allah. You guide me by your leave, right? Because you are the one who guides anybody to the straight path. So that, and then when we focus on the Quran and Sunnah, when we we'll have to, when we have in today's day and age, when there are so many divisions around us, there's so many fractions, so many people, everybody, and everybody's saying that person's wrong, that group is wrong, that group is wrong, that group is wrong. The only way we have is first to guard ourselves from fisk, keep praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show us the way, and then to keep increasing in our knowledge. And in that knowledge, focus on the Quran and Sunnah. To keep as knowledge will keep increasing. What is the Quran? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word for the Quran, the Noor. It is the Noor. And what does light do? Light shows us the path, right? The more Quran we'll have in us, the more we'll be able to see. And the Prophet ﷺ told us to the effect that be afraid of the intuition of the firasat of a mu'min, right? Be afraid of the firasat of a mu'min, a firasat of the intuition of a believer, because he or she sees from the noor of Allah, right? The noor of Allah. So may Allah Ta'ala grant that noor to us. And then we see humility when we interact with other people, humility when we interact with people who are the same opinion or different opinion, right? And then la tafarruqu, that no two people can have same opinions, same thoughts, so we don't divide amongst each other, right? So may Allah Ta'ala make us of those people who don't divide, don't fall into divisions, don't divide into firqas, and may Allah Ta'ala protect us from the wrongs that were done by people before us, and may Allah Ta'ala keep us on the straight path and guide us, just like Allah Ta'ala united us as sisters in Islam in this world. May Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala reunite us as sisters in Islam under the shade of His throne on the day of judgment, when there will be no shade except His, and then once again in Jannatul Firdaus. May Allah Ta'ala accept this coming together for us. Our efforts might be broken, but any good comes that has come or will come from this talk is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, because He's the owner of all goodness. Any shortcomings are mine and mine alone, as I'm human, open to mistakes. May Allah ta'ala still accept from all of us. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ آمين يا رحم الراحمين. سبحانك اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك 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 ونتوب إليك.